the arrival of the Titan, the void between stars had always been silent. For millennia, the great civilizations of the Galactic Assembly moved through space with caution, diplomacy, and the weight of ancient treaties. War was a relic of primitive times. Conflict was resolved through negotiation, arbitration, and carefully worded agreements that took decades to finalize. The galaxy had learned that peace was profitable and violence was inefficient. Every species that joined the assembly understood this fundamental truth. Every species except one, Earth, had been silent for 300 years. After first contact with the Velnar Consortium, humanity had retreated behind its solar system, refusing all invitations to join the assembly. The galaxy had watched with curiosity as humans built structures in the outer reaches of their system, massive constructions that defied conventional engineering. When the assembly sent diplomatic envoys, they were politely turned away at the heliopause. When trade delegations arrived, they received the same courteous refusal. Earth wanted nothing to do with the galactic community. The Assembly Council debated endlessly about the mysterious species that chose isolation over prosperity, but eventually, humanity was forgotten. They were just another stubborn primitive race that would either join eventually or fade into irrelevance. Then the Krathic Dominion made a mistake. The Krathic were a warrior species who had been forcibly pacified 2,000 years ago after a brutal conflict with the Assembly's combined fleets. They had been reduced to a client state, their military gutted, their pride shattered. For 2 millennia, they had obeyed the Assembly's laws, attending councils, signing treaties, and pretending to be civilized. But the Krathic never forgot who they had been. When their long-range scouts discovered that Earth had established mining operations on several resource-rich worlds just beyond assembly space, the Dominion saw an opportunity. These worlds were unclaimed, technically neutral territory. If the Krathic seized them, the Assembly would protest, but they would not go to war over rocks and ice. And the humans, isolated and alone, would have no choice but to negotiate or retreat. The Krathic sent a fleet of 200 warships. It was their largest military deployment in 1,000 years, a gamble that could either restore their former glory or bring the Assembly's wrath down upon them. But the Dominion's leaders calculated that by the time the Assembly responded, the operation would be finished. Earth would lose its colonies, the Krathic would gain valuable resources, and the galaxy would learn that humanity was just as weak as any other isolated species. It was supposed to be a simple show of force, a quick victory, a message to the galaxy that the Krathic were not to be dismissed. The human colonies were evacuated within hours of the Krathic fleet's arrival. There was no distress signal, no plea for help, no desperate transmission to the Assembly. The miners simply left, their stations going dark, their ships disappearing into the black. The Krathic commanders were confused but pleased. The humans had run without a fight. The Dominion celebrated their bloodless conquest and began establishing military outposts on the captured worlds. They sent a formal notice to Earth, demanding recognition of Krathic sovereignty over the territory. They expected negotiation, perhaps even tribute. They expected humanity to behave like every other species in the galaxy. What they got instead was a message. A single transmission from Earth's Central Command, broadcast across all frequencies. The voice was calm, almost bored, as if reading from a prepared script. The message was brief. Withdraw from human territory within 72 hours or face military action. This is your only warning. The Krathic Dominion laughed. The Assembly Council was stunned. Humanity was threatening one of the galaxy's oldest military powers with a fleet that, according to all available intelligence, did not exist. Earth had no warships, no orbital defense platforms, no signs of military buildup beyond a few patrol craft. The threat was absurd, the posturing of a species that did not understand how the galaxy worked. 72 hours passed. The Krathic did not withdraw. They sent a response, mocking humanity's arrogance and promising to teach Earth the cost of challenging a true warrior race. The Assembly prepared emergency resolutions, diplomatic interventions, anything to prevent what they assumed would be a massacre. Some council members argued for intervention to protect humanity from its own foolishness. Others suggested letting the Krathic teach Earth a harsh but necessary lesson about galactic realities. The debate continued for hours with no consensus reached. Then the sensors lit up. Every ship in the Krathic fleet, Every assembly monitoring station within 100 light years. Every deep space observatory suddenly detected something emerging from Earth's solar system. It was moving faster than any ship in recorded history, its energy signature unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. The object was massive, larger than any vessel in the assembly archives, and it was heading directly toward the Galactic fleet. The initial reports were dismissed as sensor malfunctions or data corruption. Nothing that size could move that fast. Nothing that large could even be built without the industrial capacity of a dozen worlds. But the readings were confirmed, verified and reconfirmed by independent systems. It was real, the Titan had arrived. The warship was a monument to human engineering, a vessel so vast that it distorted space around it. Its hull was not metal but something darker, something that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's dimensions were incomprehensible. 20 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon systems that the galaxy had no classification for. It did not slow as it approached the Galactic fleet. It did not broadcast threats or demands. It simply existed, a predator among prey, and every instinct in the Galactic commanders screamed that they had made a terrible mistake. The Dominion's admiral ordered an attack. 200 warships opened fire simultaneously, launching missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles in a coordinated barrage that should have vaporized any target. The weapons struck the Titan's hull and vanished, not deflected, not absorbed, but simply ceased to exist as if they had crossed some threshold into a different reality. The human warship did not return fire. It did not need to. As it passed through the Galactic formation, the smaller ships began to fail. Systems shut down, engines died, life support flickered and went dark. The Titan's presence alone was disabling the entire fleet, some kind of electromagnetic or gravitational effect that rendered conventional technology useless. Panic spread through the Galactic ranks. Ships attempted to retreat, but their engines would not respond. Escape pods launched in desperation, drifting helplessly in the void. The Admiral sent a frantic transmission to Earth, begging for mercy, offering surrender, promising withdrawal. The human response was cold and immediate. "You were warned." Then the Titan opened fire. The weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. There were no visible projectiles, no energy beams, just sudden points of light that appeared in space and expanded into spheres of destruction. Each sphere touched a Galactic warship and the vessel simply disintegrated. Atoms scattered across millions of kilometers. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Galactic fleet was gone. Not defeated, not disabled, but completely erased from existence. The galaxy watched in horror. Every species monitoring the engagement saw the same thing. Humanity had not negotiated, had not sought diplomatic solutions, had not appealed to the assembly for help. They had answered the Galactic threat with overwhelming, terrifying force. The Titan remained in position for another hour, silent and ominous before turning back toward Earth's solar system. As it departed, it sent one final message to the galaxy. Human territory is not negotiable. This is not an invitation to talk. This is a statement of fact. The transmission ended, and the warship vanished into the dark, leaving behind only debris and disbelief. The Assembly's dilemma. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session within hours of the Titan's withdrawal. The Grand Chamber on Velnar Prime, normally a place of measured debate and careful protocol, erupted into chaos. Representatives from 300 species shouted over each other, demanding explanations, calling for sanctions, proposing military responses. The holographic displays showed the engagement on repeat, each viewing making the reality more undeniable. Humanity had destroyed a fleet of 200 warships without sustaining a single hit. They had done it with one vessel, and they had done it in minutes. The Velnar Chancellor, an ancient being whose species had founded the Assembly 5,000 years ago, called for order. The chamber fell silent, though the tension remained palpable. The Chancellor's voice was calm but carried an edge of concern that few had ever heard before. "We must understand what we have witnessed. This was not war as we know it. This was extermination. The humans did not disable the Galactic fleet. They did not capture prisoners. They erased 200 ships and their crews from existence. We need information before we act." The words were reasonable, but everyone in the chamber understood the underlying fear. If humanity could do this to the Galactic, what could they do to the rest of the galaxy? The Assembly's Intelligence Division presented their findings. The data was incomplete, frustratingly so, because humanity had been so isolated for so long. What little was known painted a disturbing picture. 300 years ago, when first contact had been made, Earth was a single planet with limited spaceflight capability. Their technology was crude, their society fractured by internal conflicts, their scientific understanding centuries behind the galactic standard. The initial contact team had recommended patience, suggesting that humanity might be ready for membership in another 1,000 years. But when the Assembly tried to establish formal relations, Earth had shut them out completely. What happened during those 300 years of isolation was a mystery. Observation from a distance had shown massive construction projects throughout the solar system, strange energy signatures that defied analysis, and a complete reorganization of human society. The scattered nations of Earth had unified into a single governing body, called the Terran Federation. Population had exploded, spreading to Mars, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and countless orbital habitats. Industrial output had increased by orders of magnitude, but none of it matched standard galactic technology. The humans were not copying what they had learned from the Assembly. They were developing something entirely different. The Titan was the result of that development. The ship's technology was so alien that even the Assembly's most advanced scientists could not explain how it worked. The hull material was not composed of known elements. The propulsion system generated no detectable exhaust or radiation. The weapons violated the fundamental laws of physics as the galaxy understood them. Energy could not simply erase matter without producing massive heat signatures or radiation. Yet that was exactly what had happened. The Galactic ships had not exploded or melted. They had simply stopped existing, their atoms dispersed so thoroughly that nothing remained but faint traces of ionized gas. Some council members argued that the Titan was a one-time demonstration, a technological marvel that humanity had poured all their resources into building. They suggested that Earth was now vulnerable, having revealed their only weapon. Others disagreed, pointing out that a species capable of building one such ship could build more. The real question was how many more. The Assembly sent cautious inquiries to Earth, carefully worded requests for dialogue, offers of trade, and cooperation. Every message went unanswered. The heliopause remained closed. The boundaries of human space clearly marked and absolutely enforced. Small vessels that approached too closely were warned once, then disabled and towed back across the border. No exceptions were made. The Galactic Dominion collapsed. The loss of their fleet was catastrophic, but worse was the realization that they had awakened something terrible. The Dominion's government fell within days, replaced by emergency leadership that immediately sent a formal apology to Earth and renounced all claims to the disputed territories. The humans did not acknowledge the apology. The Assembly tried to mediate, offering to negotiate a settlement that would satisfy both parties. Earth's response was brief and inflexible. The matter is closed. The territory is ours. Do not contact us again regarding this issue. The message was delivered with the same bored tone as the original warning, as if the destruction of an entire fleet was a minor administrative matter. Fear spread through the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humanity suddenly wanted to know everything about them. Trade routes were rerouted to avoid human space. Military planners began drawing up contingency scenarios for conflict with Earth, though none of them were optimistic. The Titan had demonstrated capabilities that made conventional warfare obsolete. If humanity chose to expand their territory, what force could stop them? The Assembly's combined fleets numbered in the thousands, but after watching the Galactic engagement, no one was confident that numbers would matter. Quality had always been more important than quantity in galactic conflicts, and the humans had demonstrated quality that was incomprehensible. A faction within the Assembly advocated for preemptive action. They argued that humanity was clearly building a war machine, and that waiting would only make them stronger. Better to strike now before Earth could deploy more Titan-class warships, before they could expand their territory further. The proposal was radical, unprecedented in Assembly history. The galaxy had not waged offensive war in over 1,000 years, but the representatives supporting the idea pointed to the Galactic fleet's fate as evidence that humanity could not be contained through diplomacy. They were not interested in joining the galactic community. They were building something separate, something dangerous, and the galaxy needed to respond before it was too late. The opposition argued that attacking humanity would be suicide. They had no idea how many Titans Earth possessed or what other weapons they had developed. Provoking a war with an unknown enemy who had already demonstrated superior technology was insane. Better to maintain the status quo, respect human borders, and hope that eventually Earth would choose to engage peacefully. The debate raged for weeks with no clear consensus emerging. Every species had their own interests, their own fears, their own calculations about how to survive in a galaxy where the rules had suddenly changed. While the assembly argued, humanity remained silent. No new transmissions came from Earth. The Titan did not reappear. The borders of human space remained fixed, neither expanding nor contracting. It was as if Earth was waiting, watching, evaluating how the galaxy would respond to their demonstration of power. Some xenopsychologists suggested that the silence itself was a message, a way of letting the galaxy's own fear do the work of keeping them safe. Others believed that humanity was simply indifferent, that they genuinely had no interest in the assembly or its members. Both theories were unsettling in their own way. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A small independent research station on the edge of human space detected something strange. Energy readings consistent with the Titan's signature, but much smaller. Analysis suggested it was not a warship but some kind of construction platform. The station's crew, desperate for information that might help the galaxy understand humanity, made the dangerous decision to observe more closely. What they found changed everything. There were not one but 7 massive shipyards in the outer reaches of Earth's solar system, each building hull sections that dwarfed anything in the galactic archives. The humans were not building more Titans. They were building something bigger. The report reached the Assembly Council within hours. The implications were staggering. If humanity could build ships larger than the Titan, and if each of those ships possessed similar capabilities, then Earth could potentially field a fleet that would make the Assembly's combined forces irrelevant. The preemptive strike faction grew louder, insisting that action had to be taken immediately. But the opposition countered with a chilling observation. If humanity was building this openly, within sight of the galaxy's monitoring stations, then they wanted the Assembly to know. This was not a secret military buildup. This was another message, as clear as the destruction of the Galactic fleet. Earth was saying that they could not be threatened, could not be intimidated, and could not be stopped. The galaxy had 2 choices: accept humanity's independence or face consequences that no one wanted to imagine. The Chancellor made a decision. The Assembly would send one final diplomatic mission to Earth, but this time it would be different. No demands, no expectations, no attempts to incorporate humanity into the existing power structure. Just a simple question: what did Earth want? The mission would be led by Ambassador Theron, a Velnar diplomat known for his ability to communicate with even the most alien mindsets. His ship would approach the heliopause unarmed, carrying no weapons, no military escort, nothing that could be interpreted as a threat. He would broadcast continuously, requesting dialogue, offering nothing but conversation. If humanity refused, then the galaxy would accept that Earth wanted no contact. If the